Welcome back to the county seat. We are continuing our conversation on the public lands bill process. Washington County's gone through it. Emery County is further ahead than any other county in the state. Many other counties are just kind of holding off to see what's happening as they develop their plans. Joining us for this conversation is who might be called the granddaddy of public lands bill, because he's been through a couple of them.
Never been said better.
Randy Johnson, who is consulting Emery County on their public lands bill, was engaged in the Washington County bill process. Mike McCandless, who is the Economic Development Director for Emery County, and Ray Peterson, who is the Public Lands Director for Emery County. So let us continue our conversation. Where we left off before, we were discussing what the bill looks like, and the fact that it's not a wilderness bill, it's a multiple use bill, and that it actually improves things. The last question we asked was what happens to the wilderness study areas. We were in the middle of that. So let's toss it back out and let's go forward from there.
Well, one of the thoughts I think you have to keep in mind with what we did is when we started our process, Ray kind of started this off by looking at the whole county would be eligible for some kind of designation, and what do we look at in terms of maps. And so he started by doing an analysis of what mining leases are active, what are mineral potentials, what are a list of all of these resources, and basically started pulling lands off the table for any kind of designation if they had another conflict, and so there was a great amount of effort that went into identifying what are the existing uses that are going through, what are the potential uses. And so whether that be wilderness experience, whether that be recreation experience, whether that be oil, gas, coal, that's the basis upon which we made decisions with the Public Lands Committee and Public Lands Council to help make sure that we were using those lands in the very best possible way for the resources that were there. So it was just a true in-depth acre by acre analysis.
What has been the reaction of the federal agencies to this? I mean, this whole process could, to them, to somebody who considers this their turf, be very threatening.
Well, you would think it would be threatening, but on the other hand, they face a lot of problems out there that are not necessarily solvable under the laws and regulations that they have been given, and much of what we do solves some problems with that. If you have an unmanageable boundary around a certain area of a WSA, and we change that boundary to a manageable area, clearly the BLM benefits, because now you've got a manageable boundary. And I can speak to Washington County. When we went down to when the BLM was introducing their plan to implement the Washington County legislation, they listed a number of things, a number of problems that legislation had solved for them, a number of management problems. And so they viewed it that way. They've always been at the table. Mm-hmm. I don't think they find it threatening. I think they find it refreshing that this kind of effort would go into identifying and changing management problems, and that's the way they view it.
They were surprised when we got out on the ground, and almost immediately we're seeing this as something that would be beneficial. When we'd get out on the ground with them and with the stakeholders and say, what's the current, look at a portion of land, say, what's the current management, what's really taking place there, and then what makes sense. They found it refreshing to say, well, gee, this would solve our management problem by a boundary change or recognize the type of use there. Right. So they have been very supportive, brought a lot of information to the table, through the public meetings and the field trips. So they're supportive. They can't, of course, they can't lobby for bills, but they have participated with us and been partners all along.
Yeah, providing information from them. I mean, once again, we really believe that as we went through the public lands process, the resource management plan with them for 7 years, one of the things that became really clear is that they have a very limited set of tools that they can utilize. They try to apply certain, a good example is the ACEC. ACECs were applied throughout the state.
Would you define that for the audience?
An area of critical environmental concern, and it's
a
kind
tool,
of an
administrative
but it's
tool.
become kind of a catch-all for something we really wish we could protect but don't know what to do with it.
Yes.
And so we had ACECs implemented in Emery County back in the last resource management plan, which was about 1990, 91, or even before that.
90s.
Yeah. So we've had ACECs in Emery County since that time, and there's an annual requirement by the BLM to do a certain amount of work if you have an ACEC and to do an annual report. Guess what? It never happened. Not one time during the previous 15 years before our last RMP did they do what they were required to do. Why? Because they didn't have the resources or tools to do that. You have to do it, but we're not going to give you any money, not going to give you resources, any tools to do this. And so one of the hopes here is to better define where the areas of critical concern are, not environmental concern, but overall concern. If we say that this is an area that needs attention to extractive industries and so forth, we just want to make sure the BLM has the guidance that says, this is your mandate in this particular area. If this is wilderness, that's your mandate. If this is an extraction area, that's your mandate. And so we're just trying to help define even better for the resource managers how they can do a better job of what they're asked to do.
Is that really part of the contention, do you think, between the federal agencies and the people living in a community, is that they don't have these tools and they don't have the proper guidelines?
Yeah. Oh, there's no question about it. You have certain people, in the office that don't interrelate with the public very well. But aside from that, you have people who answer to Washington who have limited resources and an overwhelming job, and the public's interpretation is, hey, they're just not doing a good job, or they just arbitrarily do things, and that's just really not always the case. It's mostly the fact that they are overwhelmed with regulations and underwhelmed with staff.
And so our legislation tries to attempt to deal with that with things, with other kinds of designations in some areas that might be like an NCA or something that would help bring some additional resources. This is a really good example and part of their inability to manage. We have one law enforcement officer that covers virtually all of southeastern Utah, not Carbon and Emery County, but he goes to Moab, he goes to San Juan County.
That's probably information that the agency doesn't want you to get out there.
But what happens is we end up with that burden. So it's still being enforced, but we have officers that have to go do that. We make sure that those things are still being dealt with. Mm-hmm. But it's just an overwhelming task, and so we're actually trying to help the federal land managers do their job better.
We partnered with the local BLM office years ago, and putting another officer on the ground, which doubled the enforcement out there. But his role, and he is capable and does enforce, but his biggest, the greatest thing he's done is inform and educate. Hands out maps, talks to people, lets them know where they can recreate, where they can, where's the best place to camp with horses and stuff
it's been
like that.
Great,
so it's
an
educational tool, and it has paid dividends.
If people get mixed up and lost on there, it's mostly they just don't know where to go, and this has paid great dividends.
And the other land manager, we kind of alluded to it, with being SITLA, that terms of revenue opportunities and so forth. Providing them an opportunity to manage their land better is just monstrous for the counties, because it gives them the ability to generate the revenue which can come back to our schools, which that's obviously the hope, but overall, if they've got large blocks of land that are contiguous, they actually have much better access to utilize those lands. And once again, we talked about the $25,000 they receive total for 100,000 acres in our county. They'll generate more than that from one cell phone tower lease in the right location, and then if you multiply that by having a large block can be developed for oil or gas or coal, that just exponentially increases. And so that land manager, who is the state, can then do their job better and manage that in accordance with principles. If you're putting it in a block, if you've driven between Price and Huntington, you look and you can see where the wells are is where the property boundary between
federal and
state. Well, the gas doesn't stop there, but because of the process, the drillers just don't go there.
Yeah, well, yes, understood. That's an entire topic for another show.
Yes,
we could spend hours on that. Ray, I want to ask you a question. You probably spent more time on the ground with this, on the field trips and doing the research than anybody else. Were there any big surprises to you about how the traditional anecdotal usage of the land lines up with what was most practical? Did you find surprises out there?
Not major surprises. Maybe the amount of use in areas that I was unaware of, and yeah, I probably was the most active and been out on the ground. But there are stakeholders that came and participated that brought so much information about different uses. It's a big county.
Size of the state of Connecticut.
Acres, and I've spent a lifetime out there, but still in areas and in activities that I wasn't familiar with. So I was surprised at the amount of use.
Were there some light bulbs that went off when you got these people out on the ground? You're going, aha, why didn't we think of this before?
Sure.
Well, Ray knows the land so well, and so does Mike.
Yeah.
But among the stakeholders, there were certainly some light bulbs. I mean, there were some surprises and some whoa when the stakeholders were out on the ground. There's no question about that.
That's fascinating. We would like to talk about other bills and their impact on your process and get a county's perspective of some of the things that are happening. We will do that when we come back. We will be discussing House Bill 148, which is a request by the state to have the federal government extinguish title to their undesignated lands here in the state of Utah. It does have an impact on what Emery County is trying to do. We'll discuss that when we come back on the County Seat.